And I remember standing up and presenting to Alan, and then, you know, my mentor who, you know, also taught me so much, and like shaking a little bit. You know, we were practicing for this pitch. Yeah. And Alan's sitting in the back going, she's scared, you know, which like I would never do. And I think it was actually partially really traumatic. But
it's so intense.
It's so intense. Like I felt like I was in Mad Men, but just like in 2014, you know, it was really intense.
Welcome to No Surprises, a look inside the ambitious, joyful, and occasionally terrifying journey of creators. That's
Here
us.
We are.
That's where we are. Here we are. We have made it to today.
Today, episode 9. And with us, 9. We bring a dear friend once again, to talk to.
Yes. Longtime collaborator and someone who we have worked with on many projects. Emily Positano is the founder of Made Better Brands. Emily works directly with world-changing entrepreneurs to create purpose-driven brand identities. With a decade of experience in the field, Emily works with businesses of all sizes and stages to create strategies, design, and activations for their brand. Emily, welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much. I cannot think of a better way to spend my afternoon, honestly.
Right? It's not bad. You know, it's funny. I'm sure that people who listen to this are like, are you just inviting your friends on your podcast about professional things? And I think it's complicated because we have so many people who start as clients and end as friends, or start as collaborators and end as friends. And even people who start as friends and become collaborators, that it all is just like very enmeshed with this. And then of course we all have like the very funny scenarios of also having our family crossover, because Emily has actually had the opportunity to collaborate with both of our families on projects, including Little Heroes League, which is an incredible foundation that Mallory's family spearheads to support the needs of medically complex children. And Emily and the Made Better Brands did their rebrand not a year ago. So
you did. And what an excellent job you did do. It's adorable.
Oh, thank you so much. It is honestly one of our favorite rebrands. And we are working on redoing our website and our case studies. And we just looked at Little Heroes League yesterday and we were like, oh my God, this is so good.
It's so good. It's so good. I'll never forget, like, you know, obviously it's my family. So they for a living, I build websites with the company. They're like, all right, we're ready for a new website. And I remember Kelsey and I were like, candidly, you need a new brand first. Like Kelsey, I believe you made that brand for them. And you're like, yeah, no, it's probably time for an evolution. And you really need to talk to someone about messaging at this point, which is something
that's right.
Having worked with a lot of nonprofits before, Kelsey and I, you know, we know how important that is. And they were really reaching that benchmark of around, 3 to 5 years where it's time to like start repositioning, refocusing and nailing down that messaging. And organizations change all the time, especially Little Heroes League, you know, as you grow, but it looks so good. It's so clear. We always had problems nailing down the mission and keeping it concise. That's hard.
It is hard. And, you know, with positioning work, with messaging work, you are always recalibrating just based on what's going on in the world and what's going on in your business. And Little Heroes League was at this time that, you know, this point in the business, they were ready to step into that next mature phase. I mean, they have incredible, you know, impressive hospital partners. And so we were like, we're ready. You've done all the work. Now let's just realign your brand to show that you're as credible and accomplished as you are. You know, it's time to like grow up a little bit. So that was
this is such a good lead in because, you know, we've gotten to collaborate with each other. We all know what you do, but for folks who aren't familiar with Made Better Brands, let's start there. Tell us a little bit about you all. Tell us about what you do and kind of the approach that you take in the creative world.
Yeah. So Made Better Brands, you know, I think actually to understand why we exist, it might help to hear a little bit about my journey too, and how I
please
to the place where I was like,
take us on a trip.
Yeah. Why don't I found
I love, context away. Let's go.
Yeah, start that big, journey that I never thought I would find myself on. But, I grew up in a small town outside of Chicago, not in Chicago. I'm not going to claim that. And I went to Marquette University. So I'm also a Wisconsin. college, person, not Badgers, but,
it's okay.
Wisconsin time. And, I started there kind of just wanting to be Jenna Rink from 13 going on 30 and like work at a magazine in New York. Right. Like
who doesn't?
Correct.
Right? Who doesn't?
Like, her life. And I think she was 30 in the movie, obviously.
There is so much.
Show me a 30-year-old with that life. Okay.
Right. You look back and you're like, wait, hang on. How are you affording this apartment? And you're also the editor-in-chief. Like, no way. Right. But that's what I was going to do. That's what I set out to do. And to, study journalism. And so I started in communications. But at Marquette, there's such a service kind of focus and actually requirement within the curriculum that I started getting exposed to a lot of, underrepresented kind of, communities, particularly unhoused adults in Milwaukee, which is like one of the most segregated cities in the country. And as a small town girl, all of a sudden my eyes are open to, wait a second, my life can, my purpose, my career, my life can be dedicated to doing so much more than, magazine journalism. Yeah. And I also think at that time, we didn't have social media as kids or teens. Like we didn't have that exposure. So I think I was just extra naive and then extra like woken up to, hang on, like, what do you want to do with your life? And
the journey of a millennial. I feel like you got there a lot faster than I did. You're like out of school. I'm like, I still wanted that magazine job. Give me the clothes.
Is our collective story, right? I mean, we're branded do-gooders. And I think that's partially why, at least for me. And so I added a social welfare and justice double major to my studies, and knew that whatever I wanted to do with my career would be focused in some way, on helping folks. And so I went off into the world and I got a job in Washington, D.C., working with unhoused individuals, and, was super green and didn't know anything and was doing all the things. And that was my first exposure to branding. I was working at a nonprofit that was probably 30 years old, community-based, did not have the resources to ever focus on brand. So their messaging, their logo, everything was super, I want to say janky, but we'll say,
right.
It was,
say unpolished.
We'll say unpolished.
Not cohesive.
It was not cohesive. No, not in any way, shape, or form. And, actually just like Little Heroes League, they had such an incredible track record of really, transforming the community and integrating permanent supportive housing before almost anyone in the country. And just, they were doing these groundbreaking things for unhoused folks. And so, then me, little, 22, 23-year-old Emily is like managing the rebrand on the client side, not even knowing branding was a thing that I could do. Like, I was like, I'm going to be like the marketing manager at a nonprofit because it's communications and I'm, helping people. And it was great. And I learned so much. But when that branding project started, I was like, oh, hang on, this is really cool because, we're interviewing, people that we work with, interviewing our clients, we're talking board members, we're talking to leadership, we're talking to community members to like get their perceptions of what do they think about our organization and like, what do we mean to them? And like really digging in almost in this like therapeutic way to understand our strengths, our challenges, our opportunities. Yeah. And then, and then putting a roadmap together to say, what do we do with that now creatively and, strategically to polish or, upgrade the perception, the identity of the organization to match the greatness of what they had already achieved. So, so anyway, that was my first exposure to branding as just, a career, a practice. And I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Like, I'm in. This is
I was like, this is the way my brain works. It's, part logic, part creativity. And a year after that, rebrand was launched. President Obama was serving Thanksgiving dinner at our soup kitchen. So we were on the map, and so to me, that just illustrates, and that was back in the Obama days.
That berry effect, blow
up.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So what happened between that first experience and where you are now? Like, how did you bridge the gap between being like, branding is amazing, I'm into this, it can help power people and organizations to the next level. Now you have your own business doing this kind of work. How did you build your career to the point where you felt confident and ready to start your own company in that practice?
Great question. While I moved to New York and I started working at, to me, it felt like a big branding agency, but it was really a boutique branding agency. And I got a little bridge job working for a career coach. So I was not Jenna Rink, but I was definitely Devil Wears Prada for a while. Just grabbing coffee and doing the worst tasks you can imagine.
Yes.
I finally broke into the branding world. And this is really where the seed started to plant, for starting my own company. I had the privilege and luck of working for a man named Alan Siegel, who started the international branding agency Siegel and Gale back in the late 60s. And so he was responsible for logos like the NBA logo, the MLB logo, American Express, 3M, a lot
Casual
of those
Flex, all of the OG recognizable brands.
Yeah. And I was on a team.
That guy's got a lot of balls in the air.
I mean,
moving on.
Yeah. He was an interesting guy to work for. Certainly I, as a 25-year-old, probably at that point, I was terrified because I was on a 30-person team and I was one of 6 strategists and, had this direct line to Alan. He would look at all of my work, he my creative ideas, my strategies, there was almost nobody in between me and Alan. And so I had this, I recognized as this unique opportunity to be a young person in the room, learning from this giant and, could kind of translate what I was learning from him through my young mind, to maybe possibly in the future create the next, chapter of brand. So that's, and I recognize that as I was totally, freaking out and shaking, presenting to him, prepping for meetings with, boards that I had no business being in the room at meetings with really important people. And I'm I don't know how I got here, but I did. And I'm going to do something with this incredible opportunity. So
what percentage, not to interrupt you, but I think about this a lot, right? I mean, there's moments where I just go I can't believe that they're asking me about this.
Right.
What percentage do you think of the people in that room are also thinking the same thing? Is that the big joke of all career stuff, is that the amount of people who are how did I get invited to this meeting is actually way higher than we expect it to be?
So true. I'm sure 75% of people in any room think they have no business being there. And probably 100% of people in that room actually have no business.
I think that is the rub, right? No one really knows what they're doing, but we're all just kind of
yeah.
Well, sure, that sounds good.
Until you start doing it, you don't know what you're doing, and then you're doing it. There's very little gap between that. And that must have been a really interesting experience for you to work with someone who was so experienced, who had so much accomplished, had accomplished so much, who's then looking to you for strategy because you have a unique perspective, right? Like you have a reason for being there. And the person who, created a new way of doing things in the 60s and 70s is now looking to someone like you who, like, by their nature is closer to what is happening now. I mean, that's such an interesting part of our generation's career paths, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many thoughts of like things I could say in response to that. And it's making me think about, what Alan did was there were a handful of us younger people working at the agency. And he printed out a photo of somebody just getting thrown into a lake and hung it up on the wall. And he was like, this is how we do things here. Like, you're just going to get thrown in and let's see if you can swim. And I remember practicing I think we were, the client was Teach for America, and we were pitching them. And I was a really big part of pulling that pitch together. And I was so passionate about that project. And I knew everything, right? I mean, when you're so immersed, like I knew more than I should have even about that client. And I remember standing up and presenting to Alan, and then, my mentor who, also taught me so much, and like shaking a little bit, we were practicing for this pitch, and Alan sitting in the back going, she's scared, which like I would never do. And I think it was actually partially really traumatic, but
it's so intense.
It's so intense. Like I felt like I was in Mad Men, but just like in 2014, it was really intense. But, now that I'm out of that experience, I see how that really shaped me as, pushing me to really learn and cut my teeth and to be able to stand up in front of TFA leadership and actually run this pitch as a 26-year-old. I mean, what? Like, I probably shouldn't have been doing that. And I did an okay job. I did a good job. We got the business.
I think then you did the job. Yeah.
You did the job. Yeah.
You did the job.
So in this practice scenario, you've got your mentor at the time being like, she's scared. When you did it for real, were you scared? Like,
yes, but I was so practiced. I knew exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So I'm a theater kid too, right? Like, give me a script. I can run with it. Yeah. I was so practiced at that point that I could do it.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if part of that is like, what's scarier than your mentor being like, you're scared. Mm-hmm. Like at that point, right? That's the worst thing that could happen to you in a room like that. You know what I mean? And so in some ways it's a gift because it's like, well, I've already experienced the worst thing, which would be someone in the audience, like essentially heckling me with my own insecurities.
Correct.
And so like now maybe everything else is easier. I don't know. I'm very confused about how I feel about that tactic.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's such an old school tactic, right? I mean, he was late 70s at that point. So
I've 100% done like training where it's like you do mock situations and you have the adults in the room who are training you how to like negotiate and sell and all of these other things. And they were well known for throwing out really derailing questions.
Yeah.
It was like the single most intense thing I went through as a 22-year-old. I remember being like, or I think I was 23 and I was like, how do you rebound from this?
Right. I have like not had this experience. I have really never been in a professional situation where I had like a real strong hierarchical structure in terms of experience and expertise in the areas we're working. And there's a part of me that's like kind of envious because I feel like I've had to be the person yelling at me in the room too much that like, it really does a number to not have someone else to like drive your thoughts and frustrations at. I also wonder, Mal, in your corporate like training environment, you say the adults. Now, when you think back to this scenario, when you were going through this training, were those people older than you are right now, or were they in fact younger than you are right now?
No, they were like 50, 60 years old.
Oh, okay. Okay.
These were consultants that came in specifically to, it was like they took you through the ringer of every sort of executive coaching thing you could ever do.
Yeah.
And it was 4 months straight of this.
Oh man.
And when I tell you that they made you think that you were going to lose your job at the end of every week, like that's how we lived. We lived like we thought we were coming in on Monday and getting fired. It was terrifying. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. The PTSD, there were people who would have panic attacks in the middle of the office. Multiple people left the program because of just the sheer abuse of it.
Oh my God.
There, I said it.
So Emily, now that you run your own business, how do you coach your team?
Myself in the room?
Yeah. Like, how do you yell at yourself in the room? No, but how do you guide your team to be the best that they can be, to be their most creative selves, and to be confident when they're talking to clients? I'm going to guess you're not sitting in the back of the room going, you're scared, but how do you channel your leadership and your experience in this field into helping your team build and grow?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think as a leader with a team now, it's similar to parenting styles, right? It's like how your parenting style is a reaction to the way you were parented. And so for me, the way that I manage my team is it's full collaboration always. And full, creation of a safe space where we can play. And where there are no bad ideas, and where we can throw anything out on the table and either, run with it or laugh about it together.
Yeah.
And that's the way that, I think I can get the best out of my team. The other piece is, now in this post-COVID world, is like, we are fully decentralized. Yeah. And so my team I live in Denver now, lives all over the world. And our designers that we work with too are all over the country. And I love that my team members can live in locations that make them happy. We don't have to be in that physical room together, to go through the creative process to get great work produced and to collaborate, and we can all live the lives that we want to live. So I think that, that is one positive thing that has come out of, COVID, or living in this post-COVID world, is we can all be where we want to be and living the lives we want to live.
So this is such a good transition. I know, right? Novel. So this is a really good transition to talking about the ways you and your team work, because you and I had a really interesting conversation earlier this summer about some big changes that are coming to how you all approach your creative process and how you work with clients. And I would love to hear you talk a little bit about like what the future of Made Better Brands looks like in terms of that like new process and tool that you've been developing, and what you think will come out of it.
Yeah, that's great. So, the reason why we started Made Better Brands was to service a small business, startup kind of type of client, somebody who, a business that is still managed by likely the founder, somebody who's close to the vision for the company, and really can be the decision maker in the room as we work through the branding process. So that's kind of who we work with. And we work with that type of individual or type of business because they are so underserved in the industry, in my opinion. As somebody who, brings strategy to the table and then also design. That's really why we started the company, is because I saw so many, startups and DTC clients and nonprofits come through the door. And then either, at the kind of in the big agency world, we could offer them a $250,000, project, or we could, execute a very narrow scope for them where we were essentially just churning out ideas to give to them to implement, which I think is never going to be successful and is rarely helpful. And so I kind of saw that gap and said, well, what if, people who have, worked at big agencies and really do know what they're doing, and have, high level skills could come together and serve this sort of underserved, population who is probably going to go on Canva or ask for, which Canva is great in its own way, or, ask like a friend of a friend to design a logo, and then, but they, can't afford strategy, or they don't even know that they need strategy. Right. So,
right. Or what is strategy?
What is strategy? Yeah. So that's why we started Made Better Brands. And based on, kind of understanding that end-to-end process of creating a brand from zero, we developed a way of working with our clients that could actually make high quality branding affordable to them, which is to productize the branding experience. So the way that we're working now is we call it the Made Better Brand Kit, and it's an 8-week experience that takes clients from zero or from the point where they want to rebrand. So maybe they're like 5 years into the business and they've kind of been working with, a logo or, whatever messaging they've created, and now they're ready to upgrade. And to take them from that very beginning, let's look at your vision, let's look at your strategy, let's look at your competitors, the marketplace, get that framework in place, and then create your name, your logo, your messaging, and launch that thing. So that's 8 weeks for us. That makes it really efficient. And it gives our team the freedom to focus. So, a book that I love is on the creative process is called Creativity, A Short and Cheerful Guide by John Cleese, Monty Python guy. And he does an incredible job of articulating the creative process, which now also as a business owner, that also comes into play just in running your own business and product development, right? So like, it's about creating these uninterrupted kind of spaces where you can just let your mind be free to do whatever it needs to do to start working on that project. And so that's also kind of how we view the brand kit, is it's creating this container to like, okay, we're going to do our work, put the inputs in that we need to, and then go away and let our the subconscious mind do the work it needs to do. Like a lot of times the idea comes out in the shower, right? Because you're not thinking about anything.
Exactly.
Yes. And that's where it comes out for him.
You're calmed by the warm water and you're not thinking about work. And then all of a sudden, ding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why like a brilliant name comes out at dinner with friends, you're like, that's what you just said it, like what my company needs to be called. And so that's the experience we're trying to create, and in a repeatable way and in a really efficient way with the brand kit. So we're also using AI now that we're kind of at that point in tech development. And it's funny because I remember back in, my first agency job, talking with the other strategists about once technology gets sophisticated enough, our job will be like totally obsolete. Like so much of what we do as strategists is like research. But now that we're at the point where AI is a tool that people are using and playing around with, I can kind of see it as like a super smart person sitting at the table who we may or may not want to listen to, but like we will consult along the way.
Yeah. I guess that's my question for like anyone in a creative space who's kind of been thinking about AI a lot. Where is its place for you? Like, where do you feel like it is helpful for your team in terms of creativity? And where do you feel like it's kind of just like, you're smart and at the table, but we're not really interested in hearing from you right now?
Completely, like now, and like stop talking and let the humans do their thing.
Yeah.
For us, it is incredibly helpful to not have to boil the ocean in the research phase. So when you're looking at marketplace trends, competitive set, like, you know, looking at all the things out there that we need to know before we can position your company, when you're on ChatGPT or GPT-4, which is the more exciting, sophisticated version, and, you know, you ask a question, that tool can go out and bring the insights back to you, at least in bullet form, to show you where to probe further, deepen your understanding of the task at hand, of the industry. So I kind of see it as a companion, you know, that can just make the research process. And, you know, we would use, you know, Google or scholarly articles in the past to do that research. It makes that process so much faster and more efficient. And we can tailor it to the client so much easier when we're looking for specific answers. So that's where I really see it being helpful. And then as, you know, we get into like messaging, for example, I notice our clients, if we're collaborating, you know, coming up against just kind of writer's block, or like, I'm not a writer, I'm not creative. So using that tool as a thought starter, essentially, or to get an outline in place, I think can be really, really helpful, just to get you out of that stuck place.
Yeah. I love that.
And the same for designers too, right? I mean, Photoshop has a beta tool. We were just,
oh my God, we've been using photo AIs for a lot of Joy on our internal Slack. There have been amazing prompts.
Yeah.
Like, show us what you can do.
Yeah.
And then we're like, good, our jobs are fine.
Well,
we're safe.
Emily, this has been so fun. I feel like we could talk for hours and hours. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your world and your work and your company and your experience. It's always an amazing opportunity when we get to collaborate. And today has been, you know, nothing short of the standard on that one.
I can't believe we're done already.
I know. It moves really fast.
We could talk for hours. This has been amazing. We love collaborating with you. I'm so happy.
Oh, same.
You know,
it's a joy when we get full brand kits and we get to build websites based off of that. Every single developer in our team and designer is like, oh, they have branding. Like, we don't take it as a front. We're like, oh, now the website's going to look so much better. Well, you can listen to No Surprises anywhere where you get your podcasts. You can also find this delightfulness on YouTube. Visit our website at www.weekofthewebsite.com. And in our show notes, we'll include more about Emily Positano Made Better Brands and all that amazing stuff. But yeah, join us again in a week. Next Wednesday, we'll have our final episode 10. And we've got really something incredible planned for you. Spoiler alert, it includes Kelsey's new book and course that are coming out. Well, the book's out, but the course is coming out next week. Yeah, I'm your number one hype person. I'm going to get so much play out of I am Kelsey Gilbert Kreiling's work wife t-shirt in the coming months. So really looking forward to that. So thanks everyone. And we'll talk to you next week.
See ya.